Hello and welcome to another my aspie marriage video. Broken promises. That's our topic for today. So soon after moving in together, I started noticing cracks. The antisocialness, the distance, the lack of affection, the lack of communication, the lack of flirting, being treated like I was just a housemate. It was kind of just a little bit distant to start with. It wasn't terrible. The insulting and critiquing got worse later on. So in the early days, we were only kind of tackling those set issues about affection, communication, and flirting and such. And I would just kind of comment and say, hey, do you notice that we don't talk very often and things like this. And generally, it would go like this. I would raise a topic, he would yell me into submission, ignore me for days, then casually start talking, or I would casually start talking, and he would say, "Oh, you're talking to me now." To which I would then feel really annoyed because he was the one who'd stopped talking to me. And then the topic would just be swept under the carpet and never resolved, never acknowledged, never anything. It was like I didn't speak. And this kind of went on for, several months in a row kind of thing. Until about 3 or 6 months in, I'd have a breakdown. I would just rant, like it just explode. It was all like 3 months or 6 months of pent up frustration of never actually having a conversation. Like I couldn't even have a conversation about our lack of conversation. So I was getting really, really, really agitated. And then 3 or 6 months later, I would just a volcanic eruption. I've been asking you to talk to me and you still don't talk to me. Why the hell aren't you talking to me? What the hell's going on? I don't understand this. And then it would just be this wall of words, like just verbal vomit, as they say. And I've lost him at hello. I mean, he has just gone, whoa, she's talking too much. I can't take anything in. There's too many words coming at me. Something about conversation. I'm tuning out now. And in those moments where I would get really distraught, he would start making promises. He would start to promise to talk more, show affection more, flirt more, do more foreplay, etc., etc., etc. And then nothing would happen. There would be no change, no improvement, no nothing. And I started to feel like he was making these promises just to shut me up, not knowing that he was on the spectrum and really couldn't do any of the things he was promising to begin with. But I didn't know that. And so I'm thinking he's deliberately being difficult. Like, what is this guy doing? What's he playing at? Is he playing a game? Is this all a joke to him, And yeah, I started to get really, really, really agitated by these broken promises. So these days, knowing that he's on the spectrum, we still have issues with broken promises in the sense that he'll do things like, because I want to play squash, it's something physical that I like to do, as opposed to like running or walking. Running, walking is boring. So I want a physical activity I like doing, and squash is one of those things. However, squash is something you can't really play by yourself. It's definitely more fun with another person. And so I'll say to him, hey, let's start playing squash together. And he'll say, yeah. And then nothing ever happens. Then I'll make a date for us to go and play squash, and we play and we have a good time, and then nothing happens. He even went out and brought squash rackets for us to play regular squash, and we literally have not played since we brought the rackets. Admittedly, COVID happened. The kid kind of did put a dampener on things. But now that COVID's finished, and I've gained 100 kilos, there's no chance that I could play squash without dying of a heart attack, so annoying. But then recently he said, let's buy a boxing kit gloves and the pads, and we can, you know, have a box and yada yada yada. And I thought, oh, that sounds nice, and I don't want to boo his idea. However, I know already, based on the years and years of being with him and all the other times this has happened, that he will just buy those things and they will literally just sit there. They won't be used unless I instigate it. And that's how things work around here most of the time. I didn't want to say, oh, I don't want to bother with that idea because you always break your promises. I just said, yeah, no, I don't really feel like boxing. Because all I could think about was not having that stuff in the house because it'll just sit there cluttering and taking up space. So that's kind of how promises go for us now. It's not so much that he makes promises per se, just doesn't really stick to anything. So even when the counsellors, for example, would say to him, you need to set aside 10 minutes of time to talk to your wife, have that bids of connection, he will forget. He literally has to put a reminder in his phone to remind him to come and do it. If they say you have to go on date nights, he'll forget that too. It's just not things that he thinks about, so they're not getting done. So I guess at the end of the day, it's not so much broken promises, but perhaps him wanting to be a bit more than he can be, hoping that one day he will. So there's all these things that he can't quite manage. So he doesn't mean to break those promises. There is a part of him that thinks, oh, I'd love to be doing that. I'd love to be that kind of person. But he just isn't that kind of person. At the end of the day, he's got his own things in his own world that he wants to and needs to take care of. And other things like squash and things like this are just not part of that. Anyway, broken promises. Can you relate? Is your partner the same? Have you had the same issues over the years? Please comment below. Love to talk about this. Always love to have a conversation. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. Really appreciate it.